Hello, this is Tim Fox. For Project 1, I've created an Active Directory domain that uses a DNS forwarder externally from the domain. This is the network configuration. Here I've created SAT3511fox.com. The IP address is as follows. For server 1, it's 192.168.2.30. For server 2, it's 2.32. For the workstation, it's 2.40. For server 3, it's 2.33. For server 4, it's 2.34. Server 1 acts as the DNS server forwarder for the SAT3511fox.com domain. Server 2 is the root domain controller, which is also the global catalog and the DNS server for that domain. The workstation is attached to the SAT3511fox.com root domain. And then there's two subdomains, Chicago, which its domain controller is server 3, and Detroit, which its domain controller is server 4. Next, I will show you server 1. Server 1's IP address scheme is proven right here, and you can see it has a default gateway. I have also used the DNS servers of Google, so I've statically configured everything, which is also seen over here in the server manager. If I go to properties on server 1, you can see it's listening on that IP address. It is forwarding to those public DNS addresses. And if I click on test now for testing simple and recursive query, it passes both. So that's server 1. And plus it is not on the domain, and I will show that here. It's just on the work group. Server 2 is next. Server 2, let me clear this. If I type this information in PowerShell, there we go. I will get the domain information along with the forest information. Remember, server 2 is the root domain controller for the SAT3511fox.com domain. Here we can see the following FSMO roles. We can see infrastructure master, which is, I need to scroll up. There it is. The infrastructure master, which is server 2. The primary domain controller emulator, which again is server 2. The RID master, which is server 2. the domain naming master, which I have to scroll down for. Again, server 2, the global catalogs, server 2, the schema master, server 2, and then here you can see the subdomains Chicago and Detroit, which I will show those servers later on. Next, I will use NSLOOKUP as the tool to find what DNS server it is using. Here you can see it's using 2.30. If you recall from the network diagram, 2.30 is server 1, which is my DNS server. Okay, I will do set type equals NS, and let's do an IP address I haven't been to before, fox.com. And you can see it resolved the fox.com domain using 2.30 as the domain server, the domain naming server. And I can also ping successfully. So all communication is successful. Next I will move to server 3. Clear this information. And server 3 is the Chicago domain, or the Chicago subdomain rather. And using PowerShell once again, I get all the domain information. Here's the DN, which says it's the Chicago domain. Along with right below it is the Chicago.sat3511fox.com domain. Okay, for this domain, looking further down, we can see it is the PDC for Chicago. It is also the RID master for Chicago. And those are all the roles it has. However, it doesn't show that it's the global catalog here, but if I go into Server Manager and expand down to my domain controllers under Active Directory Domain and Services, I will go to Properties, and clearly it is a global catalog under DC type. It is not the schema master because it is not the root domain controller for the forest. Okay, I will be using the same tools as previous. Let me clear that out. And let's look at the IP address configuration first. I'll scroll up. Okay. Here we can see it's 2.33, which is the IP address I've assigned for server 3. And the DNS server it is using, 2.232. Now those are once again statically configured. And up here you can see the host name and other DNS information. Okay, I will show it is on the domain by doing this command. And here you can see it is on the Chicago domain. Okay, next I will do NS lookup. And here you can see it is using 2.232 as the DNS server. Set type NS, and I will go to another one. And here's the DNS information for mtu.edu using 2.32 as the DNS server. I can also ping it quite successfully. Okay, moving on to server 4. Server 4 is the final server, which is located in the Detroit subdomain. I'll use PowerShell, and there's the command I will be using. It's the same command I've used before. And this is all the domain information. Scroll up, and there's nothing there further. Okay, the PDC, primary domain controller, is server 4 under the Detroit domain. The RID master is server 4 under Detroit. And if I scroll down, that's all the information for there. Once again, I have to go into Server Manager and go into the properties of server 4, and under DC type it shows it's a global catalog. Okay, I'll be using the same tools once again here. Let me clear this, and this is the IP configuration. Scroll up. There we go. Its host name is at the top, server 4, under the Detroit domain. And the IP address is 2.32, or excuse me, 2.234. And the DNS server is using 2.32, or 2.232. Okay, NS lookup. And it's using the 2.232 server. And let's go to another website. And here you can see it used 2.32 or 2.232 as the DNS server. So it did resolve. And I can also ping it. Once again, I haven't been to any of these websites on these machines before. Okay, and then finally I will do an MBT stat, which will show the domain information for the computer, server 4, and you see it's registered under the Detroit subdomain. Finally, I will show the workstation, and here's the diagram once again. The workstation is attached to the root domain of sat3511fox.com, and this is the IP address assignment. Okay, clear this information. This is the IP address configuration. Oh, move this over. Okay, here you can see the host name, workstation 1, and it is joined to the sat3511fox.com root domain. Further down, we can see its IP address, 2.241. Oh, my diagram has a mistake. That's okay. This is using 2.241 as the IP address. The DNS server, it's using 2.232. Okay, all that's fine. Now let's do NS lookup once again, and it's using 2.232 as the DNS server. And let's set the type, and I will do another, well, I better not do that one because Internet Explorer has that in its cache. Let's do Outlook.com. Okay, there's Outlook.com's DNS information using 2.232 as the DNS server. And I can also ping quite successfully. And now I'll open up Internet Explorer, which goes to msn.com. And I'll go to a website I haven't gone to before. And it resolves just fine. Okay, in conclusion, this was a good lab. I learned a lot on how DNS forwarders are implemented.